In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs, and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose. As long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. This is your host, Sean, flying solo today. It is Orthodox Easter, so Alex is having a nice, relaxing family day. So today we will be talking a lot about Chicago Bears, a lot of Cubs, a lot of White Sox. But first, I'd like to thank our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. If you're not familiar with the Rockford Ice Hogs, they're the AHL minor league affiliate of the Chicago Blackhawks. What does that mean for you? You get to see the stars of tomorrow today at family-friendly, affordable prices. So make sure you head on over to icehawks.com, get yourself a hat, shirt, jersey, tickets, and more. And tell them Swerski Sports sent you. All right, there's not a ton Bears going on, so we're not gonna dive too much into it or delve too much or really go neck deep into this because we've got rookie minicamp coming up in a few days, and that's going to be our first glimpse at some of the Bears rookies. And there's going to be quite a few as normal because you're bringing in not only your draft picks but your whole slew of undrafted rookies and tryout players, and that's going to be a 20-ish players. Then those are the players that you're going to bring in, get them acclimated to the team, get them ready to go, and they're going to be mostly training camp bodies once training camp opens up in July. Most of these players aren't going to make the team. There's a few we talked about last week that there's a shot um, that they make the roster, but most times these these players, the undrafted rookies, are just camp bodies. And obviously, you hope and expect for all your draft picks to make the squad, especially in the Bears case where they they didn't have any late round picks. Um, so you're fully expecting all of your players to make the score, your draft picks to make the squad at least. And but um, the first thing I guess I want to do is now that we know what the our draft picks, our undrafted rookies, and the main cusp of the free agency looks like. We have a good idea of what the Bears depth chart looks like as it is or as it stands today. And there's always room because you're going to get these June 1st cuts. You're going to get later cuts than that, bubble players that don't make a squad, surprising players. You're going to be able to make trades, and there are still some players out there available in free agency. So this doesn't mean this is the final roster. This is just what the depth chart looks like right now. So let's dive into that a little bit. Quarterback, obviously, Caleb Williams is going in as your day one starter, and behind him you have, and I'm going to pause right there. We know that the roster ultimately will cap out a 53-man roster, but for this exercise, we're just diving into what the players look like right now, um, before camp cutdowns and final roster cutdowns. Uh, Quarterback, we've got Caleb Williams as our obvious starter. Behind him are Tyson Bagent, who I think we're all fully expecting to be QB2. He won that job last year, and they didn't really bring in any competition for him. Brett Rippon is the third QB3, but um, he was brought in because he knows Shane Waldron's system, having worked with him previously. So that's what he is. He's gonna be a guy that knows the system and come in and help translate for Caleb Williams and Tyson Bagent. He's not a realistic possibility of starting or probably even being the number two quarterback. He's gonna be he's gonna be that practice squad guy that is almost like a de facto coach. Your running back room is an interesting one. Uh, DeAndre Swift is the running back you brought in on a uh, pretty big money contract as far as Bears are concerned and modern running backs are concerned. Behind him, you've got Khalil Herbert, Roshan Johnson, Travis Homer, and Kari Blasingame. Um, you've got a couple of undrafted rookies you have um, that you've brought into camp, and I don't know what they're going to look like, but uh, they're definitely players that are going to get a look. This is a running back room that it's not it's not finalized. I mean, obviously DeAndre Swift is a guy. Johnson, you put high praise on him, um, but uh, and Khalil Herbert was your bell cow back last year. Um, and so you you look to those guys. Travis Homer is the guy they brought in to be a special teamer, and that's really what he was. And he was a good special teamer. So you expect him to make this roster, but Kari Blasingame is going to be an interesting one. Is I don't know what Shane Waldron's view is on how he's going to use a um, a fullback, and I don't know if he has plans to really include a fullback. There's not a lot of offenses that use the traditional fullback player. You might use an H back, but not necessarily a fullback. So that's a that's a possibility for him to not make this roster. But Khalil Herbert's a name. If the Bears are looking to cut some costs, and they're not in any sort of cap trouble at all by any stretch, but you know, Khalil Herbert will be going on to his last year of his rookie deal. So there's a possibility they can move him um, if they feel like they could get something for him, and then possibly even they're bringing another veteran, or uh, they signed undrafted free agent Ian Wheeler, who played for Howard, and then they brought in Villanova's running back. So they've got a couple running backs that they brought in, and they're not going to get a ton of these carries because you're expecting DeAndre Swift and Roshan Johnson to really carry the load. Um, Wide receivers. Now, I know a lot of people have talked online. I've seen on Twitter, like the you've got Kellen or DJ Moore and Keenan Allen. Why did you need to draft Rome Badunze? They really needed to draft a defensive lineman. I recognize the need for a defensive lineman. We'll get to that, and that's going to be a big need that I think Ryan Poles is not done addressing. But is you look at this, you have a rookie quarterback coming in without any sort of veteran backup. He's coming in. This is his team. You need him to shine. You really do. The Bears, the Bears know, and Ryan Poles know that this organization has really, really had a poor history of drafting and developing quarterbacks. So this is the guy. Caleb Williams has to be the guy. And so you want to set him up as good as possible. And DJ Moore is great. Keenan Allen is great. And if you could count on those guys to give you 17 games apiece with the same numbers they had last year, yeah, that's fine. You could wait till next year to try to address the running backs or the wide receiver situation. But you had a guy in Roma Dunze who you had three guys that you felt like were locks in this draft at wide receiver that had a very high floor and an even higher ceiling. And um, that's Roma Dunze is one of them. And a lot of people have called him the safest wide receiver in this draft. But uh, you look at one, it is are you going to be in the position to draft a wide receiver of that caliber next year or the year after? Probably not. You'll be taking a guy that's a traits guy. And we've seen a lot of guys that have been drafted late that are traits guys, but those guys always have some sort of negative attribute that drop them down. They're too light, they're too slow. They had a lot of drops in college. They didn't have a lot of production in college. They had an injury history. Those are the reasons that they're dropping down from, the top 10 picks or whatever. So you had that opportunity. Plus, what are the odds that Keenan Allen plays all 17 games? And after you look at DJ Moore and Keenan Allen, had you not gotten Rome Odunze, you're looking at Tyler Scott, who I can assure you we all were annoyed at him last year for drops and bad routes, and he just didn't put it together. We have Velus Jones, who has just been disappointing so far. Simba Webster, who uh, he's been good considering his limitations. He's a fringe roster type player. Will even make this roster. I don't know. Dante Pettis, who the Bears seem to like, bottom of the roster guy, but he plays hard. And then Colin Johnson. So your depth really drops off if you don't pick up Roma Dunze. And you don't want to put this rookie quarterback in a situation where it's DJ Moore and the scrub cast. You want to make sure that you've got multiple guys for him to go to help make this transition from USC to the Chicago Bears as seamless as possible and give him the most confidence and the best uh, opportunity to succeed that he has. So that's why I loved the Roma Dunze pick. Tight end, we got Cole Kmet, Gerald Everett, Steven Carlson. Um, Steven Carlson's going to be that H type back. Gerald Everett is the reason that probably you don't see the Bears drafting Brock Bowers. Is I know Brock Bowers is a phenomenal talent and could very well be a great player in this league, a really big weapon and a huge mismatch. But Gerald Everett's a really good player in a similar style role. Uh, and also, the Bears brought in an undrafted uh, tight end from Kentucky, Brendan Bates. And he's the interesting one because he, as we said before, he played for Kentucky, and Kentucky's head coach was one of the finalists for the Bears offensive coordinator position. It's a similar McVay style offense that they run there. So Brendan Bates is somebody that knows the system. He's going to be more of a blocking tight end. I mean, he can catch a little bit, but he's going to primarily serve as your blocking tight end. So they brought him in, and um, that's that's the guy that's like a candidate to make the roster as an undrafted rookie. Your offensive line, and here's where some of the questions start seeping in, is at left tackle you got Braxton Jones, and then uh, Karan Amagaji, who was the Bears one of their draft picks, and Matt Pryor. Left guard Tevin Jenkins, Bill Murray, Jerome Carvin. Center Ryan Bates, Coleman Shelton, Doug Kramer. Right guard Nate Davis, Jatera Carter, and right tackle Darnell Wright, Larry Borum, Jay Curran, and Avianti Collins. Um, this is an interesting bunch because if you look at the starters, Braxton Jones, Tevin Jenkins, uh, Ryan Bates, Nate Davis, Darnell Wright. The only new character there is Ryan Bates at center, and if you look, those other starting four when they were healthy were pretty good. I mean, Nate Davis had the rough start, and I think there was a combination of factors going on. You had he had some family issues going on and a death in the family, and I think that took its toll. And I don't think there was a smooth transition into the ethos, the hits principle that Eberflus wants to have for this team. He just I don't think he was buying in, and but by the end I thought he played pretty well. You had some injuries there, but I think those four players are were pretty good when healthy. But the problem is other than Darnell Wright, there was all kinds of time missed. And Ryan Bates, even though he doesn't have a lot of NFL experience playing that center position, the Bears feel he's an upgrade over what they had last year. Coleman Shelton is a veteran as well. Doug Kramer is a guy who Arizona thought highly enough of to take off the roster of the Bears practice squad and put it on their 53-man roster. Ja'Jarek Carter has been the backup at the guard position, and you expect him to be the primary backup regardless of who goes out first or who goes down, Tevin Jenkins or Nate Davis. That Carter is going to be the primary guy to go in. It's going to be the interesting one is Karan Amagaji, who is the Bears' third round draft pick. Uh, he's a guy that they expect to push Braxton Jones for that starting left tackle spot, at some point. And if he can be prepared, that could be a nice swing man because he can play left or right side. So I expect him to be the primary backup for either left or right tackle, which means Larry Borum. It's going to fill that spot that Larry Borum had been in. Do they look to trade Larry Borum, or is he a possibility of being a camp cut? Um, but like I said, I think the starters are okay. The issue is going to come on this team where it's the depth, and they really tested the depth last year. And not only the depth is if you look what their hopeful starting five was for that offensive line, how many games or how many snaps did you have with those five starters playing together? N- Not very many, not very many at all. So um, I, I I don't like the depth. I'm hoping some of these young players can really take that. I mean, if Karan Amagaji is the player they think, you're like, okay, I can feel okay with the tackle position. Guard, I think Carter has been here a couple years now. He's worked with Olin Kreutz. All right, maybe he could be fine. And Coleman Shelton is a veteran, so maybe they could be better than they were. But I still don't love the depth. I would, I would imagine that they're going to look for, to see if there's any camp cuts, surprising camp cuts that they can bring in. They also brought in our undrafted rookie Theo Benedet from Canada, who's 6'7", 305, and he's a guy that um, is he going to be on the active roster this year? I doubt it. I would be very shocked, but I think he's going to make it on the practice squad, and he could be somebody that could push for a spot next year. I think he's a little bit of a project, but I like the makeup that he has. Um, and he also brought in a couple of other tryout undrafted rookies. Noah Atagi from Weber State, uh, Hayden Gillum, the center from Kansas State, and David Sitkowski. He's a tackle from Stonehill. Probably will play guard at the NFL level. So it's going to be interesting. Chris Morgan, the Bears offensive line coach, really has his work cut out for him to get some of these back, this depth ready to go. And the training staff has their work cut out for them to make sure that Braxton Jones has no lingering neck issues. Tevin Jenkins, can be ready to go, no soft tissue injuries, and um, yeah, because if you can keep that line healthy, will they be a top 10 unit? No, but top 13-ish, I think that's fair, and I think that's all they need to be. Is I think with the talent, the skill position they have, that should be fine. Another interesting, or by interesting, quote unquote, I mean concerning, is the defensive line. So defensive edge, We've got on one side Montez Sweat and the other side Demarcus Walker. The rotation right now is Dominique Robinson, who was a draft pick that has underperformed. Uh, Khaled Kareem, who played last year here. Austin Booker, another Bears draft pick, who was somebody that a lot of analysts thought was to be a second round pick, maybe an early third, and the Bears got him in the fifth. Really raw, but there's there's a shot that he could really be a factor here at some point in the season. And then Jacob Martin and Daniel Hardy. I don't love the depth. Look for the Bears to bring in another edge rusher. Uh, will it be um, will it be a familiar name? Uh, I don't know, but it could be Yannick Ngakwe, who played for the Bears last year. It could be one of the other older edge rushers that are available in free agency. It could be a camp cut or a trade, but I don't think this is the roster they're going to go in. And then defensive tackle, you've got Javon Dexter and Andrew Billings as your starting two interior guys, and the backups Michael Dwumfor, Zach Pickens, and Byron Cowart. So there's another spot where uh, I would expect the Bears to try to bring in some bodies. One of the interesting names that the Bears brought in as an undrafted rookie was Johnny Newton's interior line teammate, Keith Randolph. We talked about him a little bit last week. Taller guy, but um, he could possibly, a three technique kind of guy, could even kick out in pass rushing, situations. Um, but he he's a guy. They brought in Jamri Chroma, the defensive end from James Madison, um, and I think they brought in somebody else. I'm looking through this list. Um, yeah, John McCartan, defensive end from Oregon State. So they've brought in a couple of undrafted rookies, but I really expect them to deeply be scouring the waiver wire and the free agent market and um, and try to bring some of those guys in. The linebacking core, I think they're pretty set here. It'll be interesting to see who makes these backup spots, but your three starters are T.J. Edwards, Tremaine Edmonds, and Jack Sanborn. Um, you've got Micah Baskerville, Noah Sewell, and Amen Agban Agbang I can't even pronounce his last name. I'm really sorry. Agbang Agbang Miga. Uh, and you've brought in a couple of undrafted rookies that could be interesting names. But, I think this position is one you feel pretty good about and has some nice depth. Another position that you feel really good about is your cornerback room. You've got Jalen Johnson, who's arguably one of the best cornerbacks in football. And then promising rookie last year, Tyreek Stevenson, who played really well, and Kyler Gordon, who also played really well. And then the depth is really good. Jalen Johnson, Terrell Smith, Josh Blackwell, Greg Stroman. Um, you brought in some undrafted rookies that you feel pretty good about. Um, you've got Reddy Stewart from Troy, who's a real ball hawk. Um, he returned three interceptions for touchdowns and had 42 pass defense defended over the past two seasons. Um, so and then you also brought in uh, Leon Jones, the cornerback from Arkansas State, um, and so you've got some guys, and I think the league is going to look to the Bears for whoever doesn't make this roster to really have the opportunity to make a roster elsewhere because you've got some really good names here. Safety, you feel good about your starters in Kevin Byard and Jaquan Brisker. I think I mean, we know what Jaquan Brisker is, and I think Kevin Byard, I don't know what all he has in the tank left, but I feel definitely a lot better about what he has than Eddie Jackson at this point, who, you know, Eddie hasn't even gotten a job at this point. He's still sitting as a free agent. You also have Jonathan Owens, Elijah Hicks, Adrian Colbert, Douglas Coleman, Quindell Johnson, and Tavarius Moore. So, you know, is the depth great? I don't think so, but you've got a mix of some veterans and some young players, and I think that's going to be a camp battle to watch is those backed up safety positions because that's you feel like they're going to play. Jaquan Brisker plays so hard. You expect him to get banged up a little bit. And Kevin Byard, he's a little bit older. He could be a guy that gets injured as well. So I think the depth will be tested at some point. Special teams, Cairo Santos will be the place kicker. I don't think there's any question about that. I don't even think they're going to bring in any sort of competition. You drafted Torrey Taylor, and you also have Corliss Waitman signed to a futures contract. Uh, I'm going to imagine that because they put him on the futures contract, that they're going to put him on the practice squad, but it's Torrey Taylor's job. That's his. Long snapper, you just re-signed Patrick Scales. You have Cam Lyons as well, but Patrick Scales, this is his team, I think, and for the remainder of however long he wants it. So that's really the depth that you have. And, like I said, is there's still quite a few veterans that are available on the free agent market and some quality names in there. There's nobody that's like a guy that's a top name guy, but there's some veterans that maybe a little long in the tooth but have had good careers, some guys that are coming off of injuries. So you're looking to give those guys like a 1 year prove it deal, close to the veteran minimum or, very low money. Um, and you'll also have trade candidates. You'll be watching guys that look like they could be cut from roster, whether that's cap management issues or, rookies outplaying veterans and you'd rather go with an ascending player than a descending player. So, at this point, the Bears very likely will pick up some of those kind of guys to bolster the offensive and defensive lines. Um, yeah, so I'm very happy with the way the Bears are starting to shape up this year. Um, I I like that Caleb Williams has already started working with the Bears wide receivers and working on that timing. I like that they've already had him processing the the offense because the faster he learns this and the faster he starts getting actual practice reps, the better off he's going to be. And I think Tyson Bagent proved that he's a really smart guy and he can pick up the offense that you're trying to do pretty quickly. But you're going to give him very few of those snaps. You want as many of them as possible to be going to Caleb Williams because he's a rookie, because you are fully counting on him to be your starting quarterback. So that'll be fun, going into training camp and being able to see Caleb Williams and his number 18 jersey, uh, and one of the highest selling jerseys in all of football. And kudos to you Bears fans that made the investment. They're like, I'm going all in. I went draft night. I was like, I am going with a Justin Fields jersey. I'm getting myself a Justin Fields jersey, and it didn't work out. And now I'm on the fence. I saw somebody online was selling nameplates so you could cover up the fields and put Johnson because Jalen Johnson's switching to the number one. Yeah, I could still wear that jersey and um, and be able to uh, you know keep wearing that jersey that's still current. But my wife said that was a stupid idea. So I listen to my wife in these sort of matters. But yeah, I mean, there's not a ton going on with the Bears right now. It's really just um, getting working on getting these rookies signed. Rookie mini camp, which for the Bears is coming up in a few days, and that'll be our first look at these players. And I think there's going to be a ton of eyes on the Bears rookie minicamp, way more than usual because of Caleb Williams. And the last thing is we haven't had the announcement yet for Hard Knocks, but I keep thinking about it more and more. And I know Alex and I talked about it last week, but I just I don't see a scenario where the Bears don't get Hard Knocks next year or this coming off the season, like training camp. Like, why wouldn't you? You look at, you know, is it the most interesting team? Maybe, maybe not. But any team that has more is more interesting than the Bears, like you could be like, oh, the Chiefs. All right, agreed with the Taylor Swift angle and Super Bowl defending Super Bowl champions back to back and the best quarterback in the league. All right, that is a very interesting place. Andy Reid just signed a contract extension. Like I you have your two superstar players and your head coach are very charismatic, very the faces of the NFL. Uh, Perfect, but they don't have to do it. They can't be forced to do it. And do they want to? They haven't. Why would they? So that's the interesting names are teams that I don't know if uh, you care about them. So the teams that there's only three teams that cannot veto this. That they have to like if they are tapped on the shoulder, they can't veto it. And Bears are one of them. And that just they didn't make the playoffs. They don't have a first year head coach. They had the number one overall pick, who is a very celebrated pick. Um, he's been a guy that people have identified as the number one quarterback for years now. You also got one of the elite wide receivers, and you made a trade for an elite wide receiver. I just this is this screams Bears having hard knocks. And up until this point, I've been really reluctant because the teams that get hard knocks, there's a lot of visibility on them. And if it's not going to be a good visibility, that's bad for the Bears. Like, if they're going to be the worst team in the league or one of the worst teams in the league or start the season 0 and 4, that's bad. You don't want that attention on you. You just become the butt of jokes. But this offseason, things are changed. Like that perception of the Bears has started to change. And, I think having the rest of the league really look at the Bears and say, huh, maybe this is for real. And you look at the Lions when they first started to ascend, the league started changing their perception based on hard knocks. You got that first glimpse at Dan Campbell and biting kneecaps, and you're like, okay, all right, this team is hard nosed and got a lot of attention, and that helped them. Uh, from a league perspective, is fans started looking at them differently. Announcers started talking about them differently. They've started to become favorites. They're not a laughing stock anymore. And even though I think they're a very good team. Like, don't get me wrong, but I I don't think they're legit Super Bowl contenders. Are they contenders to push the big boys like and basically possibly knock one of them out of the playoffs? Yeah, but I just don't think that they're Super Bowl contenders. We the same reasons that we talked about why Justin Fields is gone is the same reasons that the Lions are not Super Bowl contenders. Jared Goff is not an elite quarterback. You have to like has he done really nice things under the Lions offensive coordinator? Absolutely. Absolutely. Was he a celebrated player coming out of college? He was the number one pick, of course. But he has not been that guy that we expected seeing being drafted number one. And you see it he's not a Patrick Mahomes. He's not one of these elite guys. So you build around him and you have a good defense, you play hard, you've got really good talent, and you have a good offensive scheme, and there's that's how you're winning. But he is not gonna come back and win you a game. He is not gonna, you're not gonna be able to put the team on Jared Goff's back and win these games. And it's the same thing we said about Justin Fields is, hey, you could trade that number one pick and get a king's ransom and build around Justin Fields, and you could get that, elite wide receiver and the edge rusher and a defensive lineman and the center and fill these holes. And but at the end of the day, if Justin Fields is not the guy to be able to lead you down in a fourth quarter drive and put the team on his back when the defense is struggling, if he can't do that, then you've got to find the guy that does. And you've brought in a guy that you're very hopeful could be that guy. And this division is tough. The Lions were, played tough through the playoffs last year. The Packers the Packers really played strong in the second half of the season, one of the best teams in the second half of the season. The Vikings have taken steps forward, um, and the Bears have taken huge step forward. Not all four of these teams are going to be playoff teams, so somebody's got to get beaten up on. And I don't think the Bears are going to be the team that gets beat up this year. We showed them last year. We should have beat Detroit twice, and we should have beat them. We definitely showed we can play with them. Uh, we can definitely play with Minnesota. Is can we beat the Packers? Can we beat that mojo? And if you win your division, like if you win the games in your division, that really sets you up well because every division win you have is a direct loss for your competitors. If you beat the Packers twice, that's 2 games up in the standings you are. Beat the Lions twice, 2 games up. If you win just your division games, you've got a leg up on all that competition. And that's all you need to do is you don't need to have the best record in the league. You just need to win your division because division winner makes the playoffs. You don't have to worry about what other teams are doing. You don't have to worry about that wild card nonsense. Like you win your division if you win your games. You win these your division games, and this is going to be a tough division, but it's winnable. It is winnable. You don't have an 800-pound gorilla in there. You don't have a a Patrick Mahomes in your division just lingering over you. So it's important that they go in and win these games. And I think having Hard Knocks starts changing the perception of the Chicago Bears. And I know perception doesn't matter as far as the team goes, but you know, we the fans are the ones that go for this ride. We have no control over anything. So, we can't control how they play games. We can't control how the coaches coach, but not being a laughing stock as far as the announcers go and the rest of the fandom goes. I think that means a lot to us fans, and I think having Hard Knocks can really be part of that. So, look for more in the coming weeks as we go through rookie mini camp and the mandatory mini camp for the whole team. We start seeing some more free agents come in, and then we're like 2 months away from training camp. So this is starting to get real, starting to get real. Um, let's switch over to baseball. I don't, hockey. There's really nothing to talk about. The season's over. The NHL lottery is going to be this week, so even by the time you listen to this podcast, the lottery could have happened. 'Cause I believe it's Tuesday. But next week, when we have our next show, we'll definitely be talking about the spot that the Blackhawks get. They finish with, they can't fall more than 2 spots. So they'll be picking with either with the number one pick, the number two pick, the number three pick, or the number four pick. So Uh, once we know where they're locked into, we can kind of dive into some of the players that could be there for them, and the possibility that one of those players could be on the big squad next year and not playing in college or playing in Russia or playing in the AHL or whatever. Um, we could look at some of these candidates. And the Bulls, not much else to say other than Lonzo Ball opted into his contract, which we all knew. So does he play next year? I don't know. We'll see. I'm not holding my breath. Um, so let's talk some baseball, and we can kind of wrap this up here. I'm gonna start with the White Sox. The White Sox are they're not a good team. I think we can all acknowledge that. But the White Sox have started to play better over the last week and a half. And does that mean that they're good? No. They've played partially they've played some bad teams. Um, but they weren't winning against bad teams either. That's that's the issue with them is they weren't winning against the bad teams. And you saw them beat up on Tampa. And Tampa's not good, but they're also not a bottom feeder. They're hovering around 500, but White Sox swept them, which was wild. And then you got beat around by the Twins, who just have been like kryptonite to the White Sox. And uh, and then you go to St. Louis, and as a Cubs fan, you're like, oh, man, the St. Louis is going to get 3 easy games here at home against the White Sox. And the White Sox took care of business. They, the first game was rough, but you win game two and you win game three today. So you end up winning that series against St. Louis, and which really helps the Cubs. I know St. Louis is the bottom of the division, but uh, you know that's I still think that at some point they're going to make a huge turnaround. No, but some sort of uh, run at things. I think the hitting is going to get hot, and they're going to be able to carry that team to some wins. And they're not so far out of first place in the division that are they going to win the division? No, but could they do enough to scare us Cubs fans because of the history and the mojo of that team? Possibly. And the White Sox, they got 3 games against Tampa. They just swept them. It's So if you can win that series, winning 3 out of 4, or yeah, 3 out of 4 series would be huge. This team is still well in the basement of baseball, but um, that would be huge. Just it's all you have to do is start putting together a few wins, and when you get a loss, don't compound those losses. Don't lose 8 in a row. But at some point, you're, if you keep playing tough and don't have these stupid errors that lose you games, you're gonna bounce back. And we're starting to see that. Like, sure, they're 8-26 right now. That's a terrible record. Terrible. Um, that's you know far and away or, I'm sorry, Rockies are right there with them. Oof, Rockies are bad. Um, but you're by far and away the worst team in the AL. But you just keep plugging away, getting a few wins, and eventually you stop being a laughing stock. Do you have the possibility of winning anything or making the playoffs? No, no, you're so beyond being able to make any sort of playoff noise. But you're 5-5 in your last 10, and you gain ground. You didn't lose any ground to the Royals. You gain ground on Detroit. Um, that's all you can ask for. That's all you can ask for. Um, you know, I know White Sox fans have talked about like, oh man, this is the worst team ever. We're going to break the record. But um, you're, you were on pace to lose like 150 games this year. Then it was like 140, then 130. Now you're starting. I mean, you're still not on a very good pace. You're on pace to lose 124 games this year, which is awful. But, you know, if you can keep playing close to 500 baseball, it's you're starting to stack wins. I really think that the number of wins that the White Sox are gonna finish the season with is gonna be in the 50s. I really strongly believe that. And um, the pitching has been better than I think we thought, and it's not been great. Like obviously it hasn't been great, but it's been good enough to keep them in games. Now it's just trying to find some offense. And uh, I know I tweeted about it, but there was a game last week where um, so last season, if you looked at just the qualified hitters throughout the entire baseball season, there was only three players that had an OPS under 600. Only three. The White Sox the other day had a starting lineup where uh, nobody was above 600. So you essentially had nine batters that were bottom three level batters in all of baseball last season. That's terrible. You can't do that, and you can't um, you can't go into a series in a game and just put all of your worst players on the field at the same time. You don't have a lot of guys that are hitting the baseball, but you know, Gavin Gavin Sheets has been uh, a good player for you this year. Not great. Um, Eloy is a decent hitter. Andrew Vaughn has been bad this year. He's been just bad. Um, but Corey Lee has been a nice, pleasant surprise. So, you've got to, if you're management, you've got to be able to, when you give these guys days off, you can't keep putting all of your best players off on the same time. Like it just, it's not going to work. Um, and you've got to find somebody that can hit the baseball. And today they found a way. They scored 5 runs, and you saw Garrett Crochet bounce back nicely. He's had the last couple starts have been pretty rough, and you know I know St. Louis is not the murderer's row. They're not the 27 Yankees, but um, they, you know, you've got some good hitters in there. Um, Wilson Contreras, Paul Goldschmidt, Nolan Arenado. So you've got some guys that can hit, and you those guys ended up having a combined 7 strikeouts today. That's huge. So kudos to the White Sox, and you had Eloy Jimenez. He's starting to, you know, he hasn't had a great season, but he's starting to get better. And you see him today with his fourth home run of the season. Andrew Vaughn has just been abysmal, like I said. That dude has an under 500 OPS this year. Like, brutal. 186 batting average, 248 on base percentage, and 237 slugging. I don't know what's going on with him. It has just been bad. Um, you bring Pham in. He had a bad game today. His numbers so far over the season have been okay, but 3 strikeout game today. Uh, Grossman, not so good. Um, Gavin Sheets, like I said, has been a good player for you this year. I, I think he needs to play more. Paul DeYoung, no good, no bueno. I know he's put some home runs out there, but that's buoyed his slugging percentage. But it's no bueno, dude. And Martin Maldonado. Martin Maldonado is batting 105 with a 175 slugging, 164 on base percentage with a 339 OPS. That dude is as close to an automatic out as you're gonna get in baseball. So yeah, you're gonna need to have some, have a couple guys that have pop in their bat. Like today, Gavin Sheets with two doubles, um, Paul DeYoung with two doubles, and Eloy Jimenez with the home run. Garrett Crochet had a really nice game. Finally bounced back. This ERA has been up this year, but it's been funny. He just hasn't had any games where you're just like, he was mid. It was either a really good game or just an absolutely abysmal game. It's been such an up and down season for him. So it's nice to see him come back into the win column. So he goes 6 innings of three-hit baseball. And then the White Sox bullpen, comes in and does a decent job. Um, so yeah, it's and the Saturday game with the White Sox, that was a crazy one. I didn't watch most of it, but I went to flip it on, and it's uh, the bases are loaded in the bottom of the 10th, and I'm like, oh my god, this this would be a loss for the Cubs based on their bullpen, but the White Sox were able to hang on. Eric Fetty had a shitty game. He goes 4 innings with 5 earned runs, no command, gives up 5 walks, and he's been, overall, I think you can say that he has had a decent season. His ERA is under 3.5. Um, this was just a bad start, and you're like, okay, we've got to get like 6 innings out of these pitchers because you went 10, and the bullpen comes in and gives up 1 hit the rest of the game and no runs, and just hold them. Um, so so big ups on that. I mean, again, I wish the Cubs could do something like that, where your starter doesn't go long and the bullpen comes in just carries you. Uh, and Kopech comes in and gets the win there, which is nice because he's had a rough season. And um, Corey Lee with a double, and Gavin Sheets with another double. It's it's nice to see, especially Nicky Lopez has been brutal. Um, you know, Andrew Vaughn brutal, and you're still missing Lou Bob. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting rest of the season. I know you got Clevenger that's coming soon, and I have no idea when Elo or Luis Robert is coming back, but that's as much as Clevenger is a doucher. I his presence is gonna help you win some games, I think. But day of reckoning is coming for the White Sox. You you can't keep this management staff, and they, not to beat a dead horse, but they handpicked Chris Getz without interviewing any external candidates because you said this guy's going to get a jump start on this roster because we're not wasting time interviewing other people. This is your jumps. The jump on getting your team ready is you're 8-26, 8-26, and that's your jump. Come on, dude. Jerry Reinsdorf is a complete joke. He doesn't care about winning, and I feel awful for the White Sox fans. This has just been a tough season. You don't pay players. Your your development of minor league players has been extraordinarily suspect. You've got the cheapest, worst management, you know, coaches in baseball. Your front office is a joke, and your ownership is just abysmal. And that's just a tough pill to swallow. And now you've got them bringing up you know, one of their best prospects. Is he ready? No idea. But you're Um, you're going to bring Brian Ramos up, and I don't know if that's going to be helpful to him or what this is trying to do, but we'll see. Um, and we can wrap this up with a little Cubs here. Is the the Cubs had themselves a nice series here against Milwaukee. You get the series win, you end up tying for the division lead, and uh, the bummer is that first game is you are this has been the Cubs season in a nutshell. Is all right. So paint this picture here. Hayden Wesneski comes in with a start, pitches six and a third, three hits, no runs, eight strikeouts, to only two walks. All right, here we go. So he gives us he goes six and a third. You're like, okay, I can live with that. And Lovelady comes in, pitches an inning, no runs. Adbert Alzolay comes in. He's not even in the closer role. He comes in for a third of an inning. He gets one out. He gives up three runs in the eighth, and you lose 3-1 because the offense was just abysmal. You you know the you had uh, you had Joe Ross starting for Milwaukee. That dude had like a 4 and 3/4, pushing 5 ERA on the season. And I think Alex and I laughed about it. We're like, that dude's got almost a 5 ERA. He's totally going to shut down the Cubs. And that he did. Cubs get one run. uh, you know, Mike Talkman goes 0 for 4 with a strikeout. Uh, Christopher Morel strikes out twice. Dansby Swanson had himself a game. 0 for 4 with three strikeouts. Matt Mervis 0 for 4 with two strikeouts. Oh, I'm sorry. Swanson had three left on base. Sorry, no strikeouts. I was looking at the wrong column here. Um, but Swanson 0 for 4, left three men on base. Mervis, uh, goes. He strikes out twice, leaves three men on base, 0 for 3. And Picro Armstrong goes 0 for 3. Just nobody. And then Alzolay has over 5.5 ERA this year. It's just been brutal. He's 1-4 in his record. I don't know how many blown saves he has, but this team, when you listen to Craig Counsell talk about it after the game, he knows that he can't trust Adbert, but what's he going to do? You look at it, and you've got a lot of injuries, and you've got a lot of bullpen usage. What? Where are you going here? Maybe at some point you you switch when you get some of your starting pitchers back. Um, like when Wicks comes back, when Steele comes back, which should be soon. Um, is maybe you move some of these young players into those closer roles, like a Ben Brown. Uh, but I don't know. I don't know how you recover from this, but I get the frustration that Craig Counsell has. Um, even in that Saturday game, you got the win 6-5, but you had an absolute gem from JMO. 6 innings pitched, 7 strikeouts, no earned runs, and he goes out. And what happens? Keegan Thompson comes in, gives up four right away, 4 runs. Like, how does that happen? So, you know, you you had built up a 5-0 lead, 5-0 going into the seventh inning. So the Milwaukee can't get anything against JMO. He pitches six. You're up 5-0 when he leaves. You're like, all right, we just need 9 outs to not give up 6 runs. And and boom, Keegan Thompson comes in the seventh, gives up four. You're like, oh, this is some bullshit here. And uh, and then Mark Leiter Jr. comes in and pitches really nice, gets himself three strikeouts in 2 innings of work. Yeah, okay. And the Cubs give themselves an insurance run. So you're up 6-4 in this game. And you're like, okay, we got a 2-run lead. This team only needs to get 3 outs and not give up more than two or more runs. And you bring in Hector Neris, and he gets the save. Give him that. But man, why does he have to make it so? I must call it interesting, but why does he got to make it so painfully dramatic? Gives up a run, um, walks a guy. Just, just give us, give us a clean inning. Give us a clean save. This, the Cubs have just been so dramatic watching this bullpen. I, I don't know what else to say. Is you look and you're like this every opportunity they have um, to just win games, the bullpen comes in and screws it up. Like do you know how far in first base or first place the Cubs would be if they didn't blow so many saves from their bullpen? I, it's been brutal. And then today, luckily, you get a nice clean game. The Cubs come in, get 5 runs, don't give up anything, and Assad again pitches another gem. Assad, go and look at the end of last season, the beginning of this season, and he has been one of the better pitchers in baseball. I know we don't always think about it, but the dude finished last year strong. He's got a 1.66 ERA right now, and he's 3-0. Gives up no runs. He walks a few guys. He's not a big strikeout guy. Uh, and but he gets the job done. Just gets the job done. So that it's this starting rotation for the Cubs has been just so damn good. Um, so I if it wasn't the offense has been up and down. It's been either just absolute punishing people or struggled, and it's the starting rotation has been so good, and that's just really carried this team. Um, so it looks like the latest news: Kyle Hendricks is being activated to the active roster in the big squad, coming back from that quote unquote back injury, which I think was just them giving him some time to try to work on some things in the minors. But I would have guessed Hayden Wisniewski would go down, but it seems like the Cubs are sending Ben Brown um, down to the minors. Um, so you know, oh, and Justin Steele is being activated tomorrow. So we'll have Kyle Hendricks back, which if that dude has another shitty start, I'm gonna scream. But Justin Steele is coming back Monday, so that's good. And but Ben Brown, he's either going to go back into that rotation in Iowa and AAA, or potentially at some point coming back in and being this bullpen guy. I'm still saying bullpen guy because I don't trust Adbert Alzolay at all at this point. Um, what else with the Cubs? So yeah, as of right now, they're tied with the Brewers for first place, and like I said, I was very hopeful at this point that playing this series against the Brewers that they could be in first place. The Mets four-game series was a little tough. I just four-game series are really tough. It's hard to win a four-game series, and they end up splitting. And Alex and I talked about that. I suspected it would be a four-game split. Ian Happ talked about it on the radio a little bit, how hard it is to win a four-game series. And the Cubs, there's a should they have won three or four? Probably, but you didn't. And but you do take care of business against the Brewers, and you have find yourself in first place. But looking a little bit ahead this week, um, you've got you just finished the Brewer series, and you got the Padres coming to town for three, and then you go to Pittsburgh for three. Um, Pittsburgh has been reeling a lot lately. I know Alex is a much bigger believer in Pittsburgh than I am, and I'm not knocking Pittsburgh. I just think that they need some bats, and those arms are really young. I mean, I think I read, I didn't go do it myself, but I think I read that the average starting age of their starting pitchers is like 27, 28. They're really young as a starting pitching rotation. So they're going to go through their growing pains, and I think you know, they came out of the gate hot, but they're you know, when you have a lot of young players, you got to live and die by those young players. There's going to be times that they make boneheaded plays. There's going to be times when they go into big slumps, and it takes them time to be able to work through those slumps. And I think that's really what separates some of the good veterans from young players is every baseball is a game of going to the mean, and you don't just if you're a 300 hitter or say you're a 275 hitter, you don't just hit 275 and you know uh, or sorry, say you're a 333 hitter. You don't go one for three every single day. That's it's some games you'll go four for four, and other games you go 0 for 5, and it's over time, you come to that mean. And with the young players, it's there's a lot more variance into their stats. You'll see a couple games where they're just absolutely phenomenal, but then they'll go into this big slump and they don't know how to work themselves out of it yet because the difference in pitching level is really drastic from the minors to the majors. So, being able to get around on a fastball at a guy in somewhere in the middle of nowhere uh, on a Wednesday night in Double A baseball, you might be able to get around on that dude. But in the majors, there's crazy spin rates and guys that throw harder and throw faster and throw with better stuff. So it just takes time to work through that. So the Cubs got to take advantage um, of Pittsburgh because you look at the standings and Pittsburgh is 3-7 in their last 10, and they went from a big lead, jumped out to a huge lead in that division. Now they're only a half game above Cardinals for the worst record. They're 16-19, which but they've really struggled. And you're going to Pittsburgh where they have a losing record. They're under 500 in Pittsburgh. The Padres is the one where you know the the Cubs the Cubs had a rough trip to San Diego a couple weeks ago. So this is you got to look for the Cubs to make a bounce back here. The Padres are a decent team. I'm not going to hate on them, but they just made a big trade. But they're 4-6 in their last 10, and they're an under 500 team. Dodgers are starting to come alive here, and uh, they're up to a 5.5 game lead over the second place Padres. But the Padres have played really well on the road this year, 10-7. So um, this is going to be a series where the Cubs need to recoup a little revenge because I think by the end of the season the Brewers are going to come back to the mean, and I think the Cubs are going to win this division by a few games, but they got to execute, and they've had so many injuries. Just Suzuki out, Bellinger out, Steele out, Wicks out. Like you've just been getting decimated. Merriweather out. Like you've just been getting decimated by injuries, and some of the guys that haven't been injured have just been bad. Dansby Swanson has not been really good this year, and it's starting to seep out in the way he fields a little bit too. Um, Kyle Hendricks has been abysmal. Let's see if we can get the probable pitchers here this week. Um, game one. I don't know. It was today. Why is that showing me today? Tomorrow. Here we go. So Cubs will be Yu Darvish, who they against Justin Steele. The Cubs absolutely murdered Darvish last time they played. That was the game that they were up like 8-0, and I think they lost 9-8, or 7-0. They lost 8-7, whatever. They lost. They were up huge, and they gave up that huge lead after Darvish went out of the game, and they beat the crap out of Darvish. Um, Darvish is still a good pitcher, so I expect there to be a different outcome this time. I don't think they're going to beat up on him, but Justin Steele has been one of the best pitchers in baseball over the last 2 seasons, so it's going to be a good matchup. Um, and it's in Chicago, so I expect that the Cubs will play hard and hopefully get the win there. Um, Tuesday, TBD pitcher for the Padres and Shota Imanaga, who has been fantastic. I know going into the season, my concern about him was the home run ball. Like if he can keep it in the ballpark, I feel pretty good about him. And he goes out there and when you look at the way he pitches, as in days where there's the wind isn't when the wind's blowing in, he's throwing different pitches than when the wind is blowing out or when there's no wind at all, um, or in a hitter's park. He's changing the way he pitches because to navigate giving up that long ball, and he has been lights out. I don't know how the whole season will go for him, you know, but right now he's 5-0 with a 0.78 ERA. That's crazy. So I like that matchup in game two. So you feel pretty good about your two best pitchers going out there, and then your final game of this is Dylan Cease, who man he ran roughshod through the Cubs lineup last time they played, versus Hayden Wesneski, who has pitched well. Um, so I feel like if you're the Cubs, you've got to jump out to those first two games if you want to win this series because Dylan Cease, he's pitched okay this year. He's got a 2.5 ERA with 4-2 with 48 strikeouts in this young season. Um, but he just mowed through your lineup, just mowed through them. So you really want to jump on them those first two games. So if you can't get to Dylan Cease, or if Hayden Wesneski has a rough game, you could still walk away from that series with a win without um, having to have some heroic comeback after Dylan Cease leaves. Uh, yeah, let's see. Let me go through my notes here. Is there anything else Cubs related I want to talk about? Um, Cubbies. Ba, 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 ba. Yeah, that's really all I wanted to talk about. Next week we'll have a lot more. Alex will be back. We want to hopefully preview the Chicago Sky a little bit, um, and hopefully we're talking about a six-game, 6 wins this week, sweep of the Pirates and a sweep of the Padres, and hopefully we're talking about a couple more series wins for the White Sox too. And then we'll talk hopefully a Blackhawks getting the number one pick and rookie minicamp for the Bears and first look at Justin Fields in a Bears uniform. So that's going to do it for this episode of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. I want to thank everybody so much for listening. Please hit subscribe however you listen to podcasts, whether it's iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, Spotify, etc. Share this podcast with your friends, how we grow the show. Follow us on social media at Swerski Sports, Facebook.com/Swerski Sports, SwerskiSports.com, or ShyFanPat2 for Alex on Twitter, or AlexanderJPatCreative.com for all the cool stuff that Alex does. And again, thank you guys so much for listening. And until next time, bear down.
Cubs win! What a lucky break! The good Lord wants the Cubs to win!
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her, you can have her, she's a Packer fan. She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like
Remember, New Yorkers, smoking crack is not legal on the plains. Bears 31 to -7.
the Bears. Oh, when the Bears go bearing down.